94% of Helm chart vulnerabilities could be prevented with one technology, and it's not what you think.
Wait, not better RBAC policies? What technology are we talking about? So we're covering how WebAssembly sandboxes Helm, the XTism plugin integration, and real security improvements?
By minute 4, you'll know exactly how to lock down your Helm charts. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Platform Engineering Playbook Daily Podcast. Today's news and a deep dive to help you stay ahead in platform engineering.
Today we're diving into why WebAssembly won't replace Kubernetes, but makes Helm more secure.
Stick around to the end for today's headlines. Let's dive right in.
So let's get into the technical weeds here. When we talk about WebAssembly in the context of Kubernetes and Helm, we need to understand what's actually happening at the runtime level. Take a typical Helm chart installation. You might have pre-install hooks, post-install validations, custom resource definitions being created. Each of these operations traditionally runs with whatever permissions the Helm client has.
Which is usually pretty broad, right? I mean, to install most charts, you need create, update, and delete permissions across multiple resource types.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. With WebAssembly modules, you can segment these operations. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you have a Helm chart that needs to validate whether certain network policies are in place before deploying your application. Traditionally, that validation script would run with full access to your kubeconfig.
But with WebAssembly, you could limit it to just read access on network policies?
Not just that, you could limit it to not have any Kubernetes access at all. The WebAssembly module could receive the network policy data as input, perform its validation logic in complete isolation, and return a simple pass-fail result. No network access, no file system access, no ability to exfiltrate data.
Okay, but let's talk performance. You mentioned microsecond startup times, but what about execution overhead? Are we trading security for speed here?
Great question. So there's been some fascinating benchmarking done on this. Shopify, for example, has been running WebAssembly modules in production for their policy engine. They're seeing about a 10-15% performance overhead compared to native code. But here's the kicker. That's still faster than their previous Lua-based solution and infinitely more secure.
Wait, Shopify is using this in production? At what scale?
We're talking about millions of policy evaluations per second. They've essentially replaced their entire custom policy engine with WebAssembly modules. Each module runs for maybe 50, 100 microseconds, evaluates complex business logic, and then terminates. No long-running processes, no memory leaks, no attack surface.
That's impressive, but I'm wondering about the developer experience. If I'm a platform engineer who's used to writing Go or Python, how hard is it to create these WebAssembly modules?
This is where the ecosystem has really matured. You don't need to learn WebAssembly text format or even Rust. You can write in Go, JavaScript, Python, even C#. Basically any language that can compile to WebAssembly. The XTism framework, which is what Helm is adopting, provides SDKs for all these languages.
Can you walk me through what that actually looks like? Like if I wanted to write a Helm plugin that validates resource limits.
Sure. So you'd write a simple function in, say, Go. It takes the Kubernetes manifest as input, parses it, checks if CPU and memory limits are set and within your organization's bounds, and returns either an approval or a detailed error message. You compile that to WebAssembly, and now Helm can run it safely during chart installation. The entire module might be 100 kilobytes, starts instantly, and can't do anything malicious, even if the code tried.
But what about debugging? When something goes wrong in this sandboxed environment, how do you figure out what happened?
That's actually been one of the challenges. Traditional debugging tools don't work the same way with WebAssembly, but the community has been building solutions. You've got source map support now, proper stack traces, and even step-through debugging in some environments. Plus, because these modules are deterministic, same input always produces same output, you can capture the failing input and debug locally.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. This isn't about WebAssembly replacing Kubernetes infrastructure. It's about using WebAssembly as a secure extension mechanism within that infrastructure.
Exactly. And we're seeing this pattern everywhere. Envoy Proxy is using WebAssembly for custom filters. Open Policy Agent is experimenting with WebAssembly for policy evaluation. Even database systems like ScyllaDB are using WebAssembly for user-defined functions.
But what about the limitations, though? There must be cases where WebAssembly isn't the right choice.
Absolutely. WebAssembly modules can't directly make system calls, so anything that needs deep OS integration is out. They also have memory limitations, typically 4 gigabytes per module. And while the performance is good, it's not suitable for extremely latency-sensitive operations where every nanosecond counts.
So it's really about choosing the right tool for the job. WebAssembly for isolation-critical, short-lived operations, containers for long-running services, native code for performance-critical system components.
Perfect summary. Stick around. We'll give you the exact checklist for evaluating when WebAssembly makes sense in your platform, plus what's coming next that might change the equation. All right, let's get practical. If you're a platform engineer listening to this, you're probably wondering, should I actually care about WebAssembly, or is this just another technology looking for a problem? Here's my framework for thinking about it.
Yeah, because I feel like every week there's a new revolutionary technology that's supposed to change everything. How do we separate signal from noise here?
First principle, look at your security incidents and near misses from the past year. How many of them involved third-party code execution, supply chain attacks, overly permissive service accounts? If you're like most organizations, it's probably a significant percentage. WebAssembly directly addresses these attack vectors.
So the evaluation criteria is really about risk reduction, not just technical capabilities.
Exactly. Here's my checklist. You should seriously consider WebAssembly when you have 1. Untrusted code execution, like Helm plugins, admission webhooks, or user-provided functions. 2. Performance-sensitive isolation needs, where spinning up a container would be too slow. 3. Multi-language requirements, where you need to support plugins in various languages without managing multiple runtimes. 4. Deterministic execution requirements, where you need guaranteed reproducible behavior.
Can you give me a specific example of how a team might start adopting this?
Sure. Start with your CI/CD pipeline. Look at all the places where you're running scripts during deployment. Validation scripts, security scanners, custom checks. Pick the highest risk one. Maybe it's a script that needs read access to secrets to validate configuration. Rewrite just that one script as a WebAssembly module. You'll immediately eliminate an entire class of security risks while learning the technology.
Oh, that's smart. You're not trying to boil the ocean, just solving one specific security problem while building expertise.
Right. And here's what I think is coming next that platform engineers need to watch. First, WebAssembly components. This is the new specification that allows modules to compose together, kind of like microservices, but at compile time. This could fundamentally change how we build plugin systems.
How so?
Imagine being able to chain together WebAssembly modules from different vendors, a security scanner from SNCC, a cost analyzer from KubeCost, a compliance checker from your internal team, all running in a single sandboxed pipeline with no trust required between components. That's the promise of the component model.
But what about the ecosystem? Are we going to see tooling mature enough to make this practical?
It's already happening faster than most people realize. The CNCF is putting serious resources behind WebAssembly. We've got Wasm Cloud for distributed WebAssembly applications, Spin for serverless WebAssembly, and now mainstream tools like Helm adopting it. I predict that by 2025, most platform engineers will be using WebAssembly in some capacity, whether they realize it or not.
What about the skills gap, though? Should platform engineers start learning WebAssembly now?
Here's my advice. You don't need to learn WebAssembly itself. Learn the concepts: capability-based security, sandboxed execution, the component model. Then pick up one of the high-level frameworks like Xtism. You can be productive in a weekend. The important thing is understanding when and why to use it, not the low-level details.
So if I'm designing a new platform today, where should WebAssembly fit in my architecture?
Think of it as your secure extension layer. Anywhere you currently have hooks, plugins, or user-provided code, consider WebAssembly. Your admission controllers, your policy engines, your custom operators, these are all perfect candidates. But your core services, your databases, your message queues, those stay as containers or VMs. WebAssembly complements Kubernetes. It doesn't compete with it.
What's the one thing you think people get most wrong about WebAssembly in the cloud-native space?
They think it's an all-or-nothing proposition. Should we use WebAssembly or Kubernetes is the wrong question. The right question is, where can WebAssembly make our Kubernetes platform more secure and extensible? It's not about replacement, it's about enhancement.
This actually makes me want to go audit our Helm charts right now and see where we could add WebAssembly-based validation.
That's exactly the right instinct. Start small, prove the value, then expand. And remember, the goal isn't to use WebAssembly everywhere. The goal is to build more secure, more flexible platforms. WebAssembly is just one tool in that toolkit, but it's an increasingly important one.
Any final thoughts for platform engineers who are still skeptical?
Look, I get the skepticism. We've all been burned by overhyped technologies. But here's the thing. WebAssembly has already won in the browser. Every major browser supports it. Now it's solving real problems in the backend. When you see companies like Shopify, Cloudflare, and Microsoft betting heavily on it, when you see core CNCF projects adopting it, that's not hype, that's validation. The question isn't whether WebAssembly will be part of your platform. The question is whether you'll be ahead of the curve or playing catch-up. There's a troubling discovery from the new stack. A security audit of over 22,000 AI coding skills has uncovered significant vulnerabilities in the AI agent software supply chain. The study found a complete lack of runtime verification in these tools.
22,000 skills? That's a massive attack surface. What kind of vulnerabilities are we talking about here?
The researchers found that many of these AI coding assistants can be manipulated to execute malicious code without any safeguards. It's essentially the Wild West out there for AI agent security.
And developers are integrating these into their workflows without a second thought. This could be a ticking bomb for platform teams.
Speaking of security threats, Socket.dev is reporting another attack on Trivy. This time, it's a widespread compromise of GitHub Actions tags that's exposing CI/CD secrets.
Again? Didn't we just see Trivy targeted a few months ago?
This is different, though. Attackers are compromising the actual GitHub Actions tags, potentially giving them access to sensitive credentials and systems across thousands of pipelines.
Platform engineers really need to audit their GitHub Actions workflows. If you're using Trivy in your CI/CD, you might want to rotate those secrets immediately.
Now here's a philosophical question from the new stack. Will AI force programming languages to evolve, or will it make them extinct altogether?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some experts think we'll see entirely new AI-first languages emerge.
The article suggests AI might actually accelerate language evolution rather than replace coding entirely. We could see languages specifically designed for AI collaboration.
I'm betting on evolution over extinction. Platform engineers will always need precise control over infrastructure, AI or not.
And finally, Tom's Hardware reports that GrapheneOS is refusing to comply with new age verification laws for operating systems.
Age verification for an OS? How would that even work?
GrapheneOS is taking a stand on privacy grounds. They're arguing that operating systems shouldn't be responsible for user age verification. It sets a dangerous precedent.
This could have huge implications for platform teams building privacy-focused solutions. If OS-level verification becomes mandatory, where does it end?
That wraps up today's news. That's our show for today.
If you found this valuable, please subscribe and share with a friend who'd appreciate it.
Drop us a comment with your thoughts on today's topic.
Links to everything we discussed are in the show notes.
And check out platformengineeringplaybook.com for more resources and guides. Until next time.